sat there with people like Jim Flaherty, who I would argue was the greatest modern-day Minister of Finance that Canada has ever had. And what Jim Flaherty did alongside an economist who happened to be our Prime Minister, making tough decisions during a recessionary period to spend surplus funds, because we were in a balanced budget, to stimulate the economy, to get us through difficult times, that saw us emerge as a country as the best G7 economy at the end of that recessionary period. That was sound economic stewardship. That was foresight. That was doing what we should do instinctively as Canadians, what families do, what businesses do. And that's have a little money set aside for a rainy day. Invest in your own future. Save while times are good in case things turn worse. That's common sense. That's the type of planning, and that's looking out beyond the horizon, looking out a little further than your line of sight. Sadly, that's not what we've seen in Ottawa. When this government took office, this current government, they inherited that surplus. They inherited a country that was headed in the right direction, both in terms of its foreign policy, in terms of its economy, its justice system. And what did they promise? What did they say at the beginning of their mandate in 2015? You remember the phrase, Canada's back? Canada's back. As if somehow Canada had left. As if we called everybody home. As if we shut everything down. And suddenly, because we had a new Liberal government, Canada was back. Well, how are we doing? Is our criminal justice system safer, more responsive? Is there more access to justice? Do we have an economy that is robust, that is admired globally? Is our place on the world stage enhanced? Are our relations with our closest allies, our 5G, our 5G, I'll come to that in a moment. Our Five Eyes partners, are we stronger in the eyes of our allies, our closest friends? Are we stronger in the eyes of those who we compete with internationally, or those who perhaps don't share our values? You see, there is real peril in doing diplomacy via tweet, or showing up and dressing up and dancing on the world stage, or insulting the President of the United States of America. Despite our disagreements, poking that bear doesn't turn out so well for us. And we have a free trade agreement that is not yet in place. And our relationships here at home between the federal government and our provincial partners is also very much strained, to say the least. There's a group here I want to acknowledge, Durham Crew, who are here advocating for their children. And I'm glad to see you here. We have a member of our caucus in Ottawa named Mike Lake, who I suspect you've encountered. He and his son Jake have toured around the country. He has spoken passionately about this issue in Parliament. And it's a challenging issue, to be sure. It's an issue that does require all levels of government participating. And it's about inclusion. It's about ensuring access to education, care, and it's showing, in my estimation, the very best of our country, that we're including everybody in that future, that we're ensuring that programs, support, and support for families is front and center. And in our party, I would say the same. We're at our very best when we move those tent pegs of the big blue tent just a little further out. When we say, you're welcome in this tent. But more importantly than that, your views, your values, your concept of what Canada should and can look like is reflected in our policy and what we do and our planning and our discussions. Because, you know, one of the greatest experiences that I've had being outside the country, as Chris and others, many here have experienced, is to be able to reflect back on just how lucky we are. Just what a blessed country we have inherited or chosen to call home. celebrate it and protect it and make it even better, make it even more open and inclusive, but at the same time having policies that are meant to do things like protect our environment, because climate change is real. I know it's real. I went to the Arctic when I was 18 years old on supply ships that sailed out of Mulgrave, Nova Scotia. Worked for a company called Federal Navigations. We were delivering life supplies, everything you can imagine, into tiny Arctic communities, along what they used to call the dew line, all along the high Arctic. And in July and August, when we were there, you couldn't get in to those ports. They were blocked with ice. There was permafrost in the ground. It was impassable. We had an icebreaker to take us in. On one occasion, we were stuck there for 4 days. We couldn't get back out. I went back again with members of the Canadian Armed Forces who were taking part in Arctic operations. All of those ports were now open. It had changed significantly. The climate had changed. I've seen it with my own eyes. It's real. What we do about it and what's causing it may still be discussed, and they can be discussions that don't involve vilification or accusations because people may have different views on the subject. And I would say that about a whole range of items. Can we get back to a little bit of civility? A little bit of discussion that's respectful of the other side, even though we passionately disagree? We can say, hold on. Here's my point of view. I disagree with you. We can still be friends. We can still get up and leave this room and be friends. And that means in our party too. I don't feel like I'm running against other conservatives. I will not speak ill of other conservatives. I'm running because I believe the country needs a new direction. It needs a new plan. It needs to turn the page on some of this destructive dialogue. We need to restore hope and opportunity and optimism within our own economy. We need to restore the promise of Canada to our children, and we need to have a robust security and safety net that works in everyone's interest. And that can and will happen when our economy is thriving, when there are opportunities for all. I just returned from Western Canada. The economy of Alberta and arguably Saskatchewan, because of the downturn in the oil sector, is on its back. That natural resource sector, including farming, including the fishery, including our forest industry, is the underpinning of the Canadian economy. And I'm going to say, we have a government in Ottawa that is philosophically opposed to the resource sector, that has put in place literally hurdles, regulations, red tape, bureaucracy that is holding us back from robust competition that allows us to create jobs, energize our economy, invest in things that we need, including healthcare and education and what we need to do to build up these provinces and opportunities. We saw this blockade. I've never seen anything like this in my life, where our entire transportation system on rail ground to a halt. It took the Prime Minister over 2 weeks to say what I and others have been saying, and that is the blockades must come down for these discussions to continue. That's not to say we don't continue down the path of reconciliation. That's not to say we don't continue to work with our First Nations, but not with a gun to our head. And having our ability to move goods and services, people, medicine, propane and energy, food across this country into communities, being able to bring Canadian commodities to export, to market, to ports, all paralyzed because of paralysis at the top. The Prime Minister was away for the first 10 days of this crisis. And I don't get the sense that he's on top of this health crisis that's looming. There's this feeling of drift, that he's asleep at the wheel, that he's mailing it in, however you want to describe it. Other countries are being far more proactive, and we live in a highly competitive time. We don't have to look too far. I'm not commenting on the state of the U.S. politics or who's occupying the White House. But I'll tell you this, look at their economy. Lowering taxes, stripping away regulation and hurdles for business communities. Energy independent, biggest exporter of energy now in the world, surpassing Saudi Arabia and others. Pushing back on trade deficits, standing up for their people, lowest unemployment in decades, highest unemployment for blacks and Hispanics and minorities. Their economy is red hot, ours is in the tank because of policies that are putting us out of step with the biggest and frankly the greatest opportunity that we have in trade with the United States of America. We haven't even been able to ratify the free trade agreement. And you remember that was going to be a win, 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 according to Christy Field. It was 3 wins for the Americans. I'm not suggesting we don't need that trade agreement and we don't need to ratify it, but we made the concessions. We did not emerge stronger as a result of those negotiations. We have to be honest about that. And so there's much that can and would change with a conservative government. We have the experience. We have the recent experience in government. We have a strong opposition. We have the ability to put forward, in my view, a substantive, thoughtful, costed plan. And that's what we need. It's not enough to just tear down the government or personally attack the Prime Minister. He's actually doing a pretty good job of discrediting himself all by himself. I think what we do need are some sensible people, as all of you are. In your daily lives, you know what those challenges are in your community, whether it's transportation, whether it's shortcomings and the opportunities that will keep young people here, that will at least give them the opportunity. We have a tech sector that is enormously undervalued. And on the subject of environment and our energy sector, here's an idea. We can get Canadian, highly regulated, ethical, competitively cost oil and gas products, liquid natural gas, into the global market. Places like China, Pakistan, India, parts of Europe, parts of Canada. Replace coal-fired generation. That cuts greenhouse gas emissions by 50%. What does it do? It takes us off the reliance of foreign oil and gas. Let me repeat that. We're bringing energy into Canada at a cost of billions. And where does the money go? Saudi Arabia, Venezuela, Algeria, formerly Iran, propping up dictatorships and tyrants who we criticize and oppose. Why aren't we competing in those markets?
Here, here.
Giving them oil and gas. Why aren't we competing against Russian oil and gas in the European market? We have a free trade agreement with them. And you know what that would do? It would bring billions of dollars into our economy. Push back against the Russians, probably more than we can possibly imagine, more than we could do through NATO, more than we could do through sanctions. Bring those revenues here. Give our First Nations a partnership and a real place at the table in the oil and gas industry. Take that money, invest it in green, clean technology. Do more to crack the climate change atom, and we're doing it. And there's no place that's more forward-leaning than those working in those sectors because they're most affected. Carbon capture and storage, waste to energy, those things are happening right here in Ontario, Western Canada. We're doing more to conserve. Conserve, now there's a word. We're conservatives. Of course we conserve. We brought the acid rain treaty to North America. We had a Prime Minister who was deemed the greenest Prime Minister in Canadian history, in Ryan Mulroney. We brought efforts to clean up Lake Simcoe. We put money into preserving national parks and expanding our protection over water and air and land. It's in our DNA. We're all green conservatives now, but we also know that somebody has to pay for it. And the way we do that is use the next 30 or 40 or maybe 50 years beyond, which even the United Nations has said will be using fossil fuels, reap the return on that investment, support science, entrepreneurs, innovators, build up our green economy, fueled by our fossil fuels that are right here under our feet. But leaving them in the ground and importing oil and gas products is perverse. It's insane. It's like owning a bread store and buying bread. But yet that's what we're doing. So we're out of step. We have a lot of pressures and vulnerabilities. And I come from out east, as Chris mentioned. I grew up in a coal mining town, Stellar, Nova Scotia. We had the Westray mine blow up. I know people that were in that mine. Friends of mine, guys I played rugby with, guys I worked with in that community. And there are hard-working people out there every day who put it on the line. And they feel constantly that the government is just reaching a little further in their pocket every day, and they're getting less and less confidence in the decisions that government is making. Again, it's not easy. We're going to have to turn that around incrementally, because we didn't get there overnight, although it went there very, very fast. But I remember a phrase about coal that reminds me why I'm doing this. Pressure is what turns coal into diamonds. And some of the best performances of Canadians throughout our history came at times when the pressure was highest. Times of conflict, times when our economy was turning down, times when the world was turning away. Canadians have a sense of community, pride and purpose. They want to see their neighbors succeed as much as they want to see themselves succeed. That's a sentiment, I think, that binds us together. So the last word that I want to leave with you is one of unity. We need to unify. We need to pull together. We need to pull in the same direction. I know that those are old, maybe foreign concepts in what seems to be a very divided and divisive time. We see it elsewhere. We see it on the nightly news. And what I know and what we've lived through in the past is that when we fray at the edges, when we pull apart, we become even more vulnerable. We come even less to the front of facing some of these issues together. I remember vividly, my grandfather ran a sawmill. And I remember one time when I was a little kid, we picked up a piece of wood that was lying there near the sawmill, and he handed it to me. He said, "Break that." So I snapped it in half. I was about 8 years old. I thought, it was a test of strength. And then he picked up 4 pieces of wood about the same size, and he put it in my hand. He says, "Now try to break that." I couldn't do it. I just remember that lesson registered with me. When you put things together tightly, when you bind them collectively, they do not break. We cannot break. We need to remind our friends in Western Canada that at this moment in time, we're there. We're with them. We appreciate them. I was there last week, and I started my speech with "Thank you, Alberta. Thank you, Saskatchewan, for the investments in our roads, our hospitals, our schools, our social services. Your economy has floated the national economy. Just as in another time, aid was sent from Ontario and points east, food, clothing, wood. There was a wave of Ukrainians who had arrived on the prairies in one of the coldest winters on record during the Depression. My grandfather, who I just referenced, talked to me about sending boxcars of lumber out to Alberta, salt cod and herring. And I spoke to Don Mazinkowski one time, and he reminded me his parents were there. They were part of that wave of immigration. He said, "I remember that. And I remember those big blocks of salt cod. And some of the Ukrainians who had just arrived thought that they were shingles, and they put them on the roof." So then we had a Chinook in Alberta, and the smell was unforgettable. But it was a moment in time. Like this is a moment in time. And as Canadians, whether it was Sidney Crosby's goal, Paul Henderson's goal, or the Canadian women's hockey team, or the Raptors winning, it's been sport. And sometimes the arts, sometimes it's academics that win global prizes that have brought us together. And that's when we're at our finest. Wouldn't it be nice to see a government that people felt proud of, that felt confident in? And I dare say that we would change a lot of the notoriety and the celebrity and the sense of drama and rhetoric for dramatic results and competence, just starting there at a pretty basic level. But it can and will happen. And here's the good news. I'm coming to the end of my speech. Here's the good news. It's all predicated on democracy. And democracy is predicated on participation. And that means power in your hands. Power in your hands in this particular contest, which I hope you will give me consideration, but ultimately the goal is government. The goal is replacing the current government. And in many parts of the world, many that you know more intimately than I, governments didn't change and don't change without the sound of a gun, without the prospect of violence. We enjoy one of the strongest and most robust democracies on the planet. And we have a solemn responsibility to uphold that democracy, to come out, to play our part, to vote. And I say to young people all the time that I've been having lots of opportunities to meet young people who are engaged. I feel optimistic when I talk to young people. Even though they may have different ideas and you have to pry their cell phone out of their hand to get their attention. But they want to hear your ideas and they want to tell you theirs. But I always say something that a counselor back in my hometown told me. He said, when you're talking to young people, remind them that if you don't go to the dance, don't complain about the music. If you want to be participants in your own future, if you want to have a chance to shape the decision and the outcome that affects you on whatever issue, whatever turns you on, whatever gets you excited, go to the dance. Change the music, be the music. Be full participants in your life, and that's what democracy enables. It enables that ability to have your say. And you know what? It also keeps politicians on their toes, because they have to reapply. What they say today is going to be something that you will remind them of later. So let me end where I began with words of thanks to all of you for coming out. I hope we'll have a chance to speak personally. I'm grateful for the opportunity afforded me. I'm excited to be in this race. It is a chance to engage in the life of this nation at a critical time, and it won't be easy. It's tough. I've eaten a lot of Tim Hortons soup, and I've seen a lot of places already. 8 provinces. We're going to get to the territories next week. But this is where it really happens. This is where you get the full, unvarnished story of Canada from working people. I don't believe in this division of classes or region against region or virtue signaling or attempts to divide people for political gain. Canada collective, Canada as a whole, that's our goal. And as a Conservative party, as a party that put the country together, as a party that built that railway against all odds that's now been blockaded, we have a lot to be proud of. That was the biggest infrastructure project, by the way, ever undertaken. I don't think that project could happen today. I think there would be government interference and regulation and bureaucracy that would help, that would stop that type of project today. So we need to get back to the basics. We need to support working people and building things. I remember in my little community, we had a Massey Ferguson tractor and Pioneer chainsaw. We don't make those anymore. Our manufacturing sector is starting to dry out. We make parts of things now. You in this region understand. We make a lot of auto parts. We don't make things. We don't add the value that we used to. We need to get back some of that capacity to do more for ourselves, to create jobs. And a lot of it will be in a new tech sector where we can harness the great minds that are there and making this country more productive. That's not a bad word. Neither is success. Those are things we need to celebrate. So again, my sincere thanks for coming out. It's very heartening to see so many of you here and to see many familiar faces. I look forward to coming back again, as I have on occasion, maybe taking the GO train up. It seems to be moving pretty well lately.
Take the Express.
Take the Express, Chris says. It's a great idea. I truly appreciate your interest and your involvement, and I greatly appreciate your support. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being here. I'm so proud to be the organizer for the Durham region, and if any of you want to help us to get this person here, Peter MacKay, to be the next Prime Minister of Canada, please see me after. Peter's going to stay up. He's going to stick around and chat with you, perhaps over here on the right if that works, and we'll just form a line to come and see him, and hopefully as many of you as possible will have a chance to meet and greet with Peter. I know that he wants to talk with all of you if he can. So thank you so much.